Hello and welcome to the final whistle. A frustrating afternoon at St Mary's as Southampton lost 5-2 to Tottenham. Now here to dissect it all with us, with Kenzie and myself, are Dean Hammond and Adam Leitch. Let's start with you, Dean. What went wrong for Southampton today?
Well, I think the first 10 minutes was pretty scrappy for both teams. I think no one could really get control of the ball. No one could really get a pass off and take control of the game. And then I thought Southampton for the last 30 minutes of the first half were excellent. Played really, really good, high intensity football, won the ball back, created chances, scored an excellent goal. Che Adams had a couple of chances which potentially, at this level you should be taking really. And that could have been the difference between, Tottenham were clinical today. But first half performance was good except for the goal, which would have deflated the Southampton players just before half-time, just to make it 1-1. And it was really interesting because tactically both teams were playing a very high line. So the pitch was actually pretty small. So Southampton first half could get a lot of pressure on the ball to prevent the pass, to prevent the ball going forward. And when you play a high line, that's okay. But second half, as the game got stretched, players kind of got more tired. It was difficult to get the pressure on the ball, but Southampton continued to play that high line. And Son made some exceptional runs across the line in between Walter Peters and Jack Stevens. And, that was the difference. And he was very, very clinical. Kane, a couple of great assists for passes through to him. And that just really opened the game up. So, Tottenham were clinical today. They were very, very good when they got the chances. But Southampton had some good chances themselves. So I would say the difference was in the finishing. Shea could have put Southampton 2-0 up. That would have been very, very more comfortable for someone to going in at half time. So, Tottenham, excellent performance. A few things to work on for Southampton. And just defensively, I think just a little bit more communication would have prevented Son getting in as many times as he did.
Adam, is this scoreline a fair reflection of today's game?
That's a difficult one because by the end of the match, maybe it sort of is, but I think it's a 3-goal difference between the teams is maybe a little bit harsh, but it's kind of the way the game swung really that makes you feel that probably more than if you were to analyse sort of minute by minute because as Dean said, really for probably the vast majority of the first half, Saints were the better team, and it was a really good first half just to watch from a football point of view. I mean, both teams were playing with a lot of intensity. It was an enjoyable match up until that point, and the goal just before half time really deflated Saints. And then the thing you don't want, obviously, is to concede and go behind almost straight after the restart as well, which is what happened to them. And from then on, I think Mourinho tinkered a little bit at half time and kind of got it right. Ralph appeared to largely stick with the same tactics. And the high line is definitely a bit of a concern right now as to whether Saints, how long it's going to take Saints to work out how to play it, if you assume that they have got the players to be able to play it. By the end of the game, 5-2, it's harsh, but it probably is potentially fair, just because that was, as Dean said, a difference in quality in the two strike forces really. I mean, Ings obviously got 2 goals. Adams should have had at least 1, maybe 2. Up the other end, you've got two players who are absolutely bang world class, and obviously delivered the goals when they had the chances to do so. A disappointing day really, for frustrating and disappointing, because we said before the game, performance or result. Looked for times as if we were getting the performance, probably come away feeling didn't quite get it. Looked at times as if we might get the result, came away definitely not getting it. So some bright sparks in there, but still a lot to work on.
Yeah, moving on to the goals. Both sides had one disallowed early on before Danny Ings finished. Dean, how did you rate his goal?
Very, very good. Excellent movement in behind. Got in the channel in between the central defender and the fullback. An excellent pass by Walter Peters in behind, and a very, very good finish. I mean, Danny Ings' awareness where he knows where he is in the box. He's a natural goal scorer. An excellent finish across the goalkeeper. very similar to actually the position he got into last season for his goal, where he actually chipped it over the defender and then finished with his left foot. So, a good run, an intelligent run. But yeah, the disallowed goal for Tottenham was probably a warning of what was potentially coming within the game, where I think Son got in behind Jack Stevens and Walter Peters and made that run in behind and then crossed for I think it was a second phase when it actually came back across and then Harry Kane scored. But that was kind of the pattern of the game. But no, an excellent finish from Danny Ings, and would have given his confidence a world of good. And for him to get the second goal as well, I think that's one of the positives today, for him getting off the mark and scoring two good goals, because he's such an important player for the team. If he's confident he's scoring goals, he'll be a big player for the club this season. So that's one of the positives from today, and an excellent finish from him.
Yeah, it certainly was a great two-touch finish, wasn't it? But of course, Son did equalise on the stroke of at half-time. Very, very frustrating. Can any blame be put on anyone specific there? And kind of how frustrating is that for the side to concede just before going into the second half?
Yeah, I mean, frustrating. I mean, your first instinct is to look at Alex McCarthy, because he does a bit of the hokey cokey. Is he going to come? Is he going to left foot in, right foot out, whatever? And sort of ends up in a bit of no man's land. I mean, it's easy to say when you're sat there watching it, but when you see the replay, I think if he'd have come, he would have got the ball, but he obviously decides to back off. The shot looks like it maybe takes a little deflection off Bertrand as well, which makes it then hard for him to even harder for him to stop, even though it was a good shot anyway. But it's kind of the consequence of playing the high line that Saints are playing. That your goalkeeper very much has to be in tune with how to play that. You need to have what I guess would have been termed a sweeper keeper. You need to have somebody who's willing to come out, to take a bit of a risk in some ways to play that way. McCarthy, throughout today's game, and probably in the previous couple of games, just doesn't look entirely comfortable with knowing what he's doing with that. And the decision making has been a little bit indecisive. You could argue, I think probably fairly, the two centre halves don't look entirely comfortable playing that way either. I think that it's less, to me, it's less about individual blame, and it's more collectively, are the tactics right for this group of players? And then are they being executed correctly across the whole team? And I think you can debate as much as you want whether the tactics are right or not. That's up to Ralph to decide. But if they are right, then they're obviously not being executed, or you don't lose 3 games in a row and concede goals in sort of a vaguely similar manner today, time and time again, which was holding that high line and basically the line being breached with a ball over the top or around the side. And that's concerning, because most, even though I think when we look ahead to Burnley, that they play less like that, they have less of that quality and pace, but most teams in the Premier League will be able to counter that way of playing if you can't execute it successfully. So there's a lot to think about for Ralph, I think, as to whether he revises these tactics going forward, or whether he keeps the faith and just keeps working on it with the hope that they will come good.
Yeah, on that, 4 of Spurs' goals were almost carbon copies in the way they were conceded. Dean, was it just poor defending, or were they quality finishes?
Well, let's go with it. They were all excellent passes, so very good assists, and Son's runs were very intelligent. His timing of his runs were very good. So that's a positive for Tottenham. They have got real high quality, and Adam said, they're world-class players, Harry Kane and Son. So, it was well executed, but you can stop it. You can slow the movement down. I think it came in that right channel between Walker Peters and Jack Stevens, and it just needed a little bit of communication between the two, or the use of, Walker Peters is exceptional going forward. We talked before the show of, he's a very good player. He's a very good signing for the club. He's developing as a youngster. But yeah, his use of his body when defending, when Son's run across him, could have just been more effective. He could have put his arm out. He could have slowed the run. He could have talked to Jack Stevens, maybe not go so far across. He could have opened his body out. So, very simple errors that happen. The way the pace of the game that is played in the Premier League, is difficult to stop that in a moment. It's easy for us to analyse, but they're the small things. And you're right, they're very similar goals. So in some respects, it's quite a positive thing, because if you can train that and you can work on that, then you can prevent them opportunities happening. But no, good finishing, but just a little bit of naivety in the defender, and just that little bit of experience needed. And I think that's the next stage for Jack. Jack, if he can be more demanding, if he can be that centre half where he's communicating with his other defenders and pulling them around, that will be the next level for him to go to.
Adam, are personnel changes needed, or is this the right set of players, but rather it was the tactics that were the issue today?
Well, I mean, I still feel that Ralph really picked the correct team for me today. It's more that's pretty much his strongest team, give or take. As I said, Redmond for Gineppo is kind of your choice, even though I thought Gineppo did do well today, especially considering how long it's been since he's really played a sustained period of a match. So it's looking at a mixture of looking at the tactics for Ralph, and then also, if you stick with these tactics, getting the players to be able to execute the tactics more effectively. For me, I would say the one thing that did concern me ever so slightly was when obviously Romeo got booked very early on, which kind of hamstrings his game to an extent. And then when it looked like he might get sent off, they sensibly pulled him off the pitch at that point. They really missed him at that stage. They really missed him. And no disrespect to Will Smallbone, but he was no replacement for Romeo up against the kind of calibre of opposition and playing the way and the position that Romeo does. And then we spoke beforehand about areas to be strengthened, and I sort of said I felt probably centre midfield. I feel that even more strongly now. If you're going to go and get somebody, I think that was proof today that they really do need somebody else in that area. So even though that's not an immediate switch potentially for the next game, I think that if they are looking at signing one more player, that's the area they really are going to have to look at, because I think it was highlighted today up against top quality opposition that maybe the cupboard's a little bit bare beyond the first two, and especially with Højbjerg and Reed having departed this summer.
We spoke about Danny Ings getting off the mark. His second goal came from the penalty spot after a VAR decision overturned or awarded it. Dean, do you think that was the right decision to give the handball against Doherty?
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, the new ruling, I don't quite understand myself. I think if it's touched any part of the arm or just below the shoulder, that it's a penalty. So, I mean, it's difficult to say, really. I think it's the referee went over and looked at the monitor, so I'm guessing he assumed that, or by the rule of the book, it is a penalty. But good for Southampton, good for Danny that he gets a chance on the penalty spot to score. Breeds more confidence for him. But yeah, the ruling on decisions is a little bit unclear or a little bit unnatural for football at the moment, I believe. I mean, we had it last week with the offside rule, where they allow players to keep running through and finish the phase of play, and if they score there's an opportunity, and then they bring it back for the linesman to put his flag up. I don't think it's quite fluent enough. I wouldn't like that as a player. I can understand it for defenders because it makes them react, so they defend more. So like anything, it will take time to adapt, and the handball issue within the penalty box has been an issue for many years. There's different decisions on different situations all through the season. So good for Southampton that we got the penalty and Danny scored, but I'm not sure on the penalty myself.
Adam,
I honestly think that law is going to be reviewed soon, because we've seen several this weekend alone that just kind of they're probably the correct interpretation of the rule, but it doesn't feel in the spirit of football like the rule is correct. For me, I mean, that penalty today is, I agree, great for Saints to get it, obviously Danny to get another goal, but it just doesn't feel right. The guy's arm is in a technically unnatural position, in that suppose a natural position is by your side, potentially, I suppose, but come on, I mean, the ball's been kicked into another player and bounced up and hit his arm from a yard, less than a yard away. I mean, it just... Technically, I think it's probably the correct decision has been made based on the current law, but I just think that there will be a review of the interpretation of it, because just doesn't feel right to me.
Well, let's talk about Shea Adams now then. He had a couple of great chances today. Dean, you said he perhaps should have bagged one or two. But Adam, how did you rate his performance overall this afternoon?
Bit of a mixed bag, to be honest, Kenzie, because I think credit on him for kind of getting into position and getting the chances. But it felt a little bit like the start of last season again, rather than the restart for Shea. In that kind of, this is exactly how he was playing at the start of last season. He was doing well, he was getting some good positions, and then the chances that a mixture of bad luck early last season and just not being quite clinical enough. And I think probably the same could be said again today. I think we all hoped that like the rest of the team, that picking up that momentum at the end of last season kick-started him and he would just take it straight into this season. Feel a little bit like, it's a bit like last year. Again, we were saying the same things. He probably just needs one to go in, get his confidence going again, and he'll get there because he's getting into the positions. But he definitely needs to be a little bit more clinical. I mean, Dean said it himself at the top of the show, really. He probably should have had at least one, if not more, from the chances he had today. And that's a bit reminiscent of early last season Shea. So I think there's enough good signs that it will come good for him. And I think him and Ings, as we said earlier, are going to be a really winning combination over the entirety of the season for Saints. But he definitely needs to score sooner rather than later, so we don't have a repeat of what happened last year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Saints were very much on top in the first half and some great pieces of play, but it didn't really seem like it transitioned into the second. What do you think that could have been down to, Dean?
I think maybe fitness, conditioning as well. I think an improved performance by Tottenham tactically and their personnel stepped up at another level. But yeah, first half, I thought, when Stuart Armstrong particularly got on the ball, his creativity and combination with the front two, when he actually came wide on the same side as Gineppo and they both combined on the same side of the pitch and doubled up on the fullback, that was pretty... there was some creative moments then and opportunities created from that. But yeah, Southampton first half did look comfortable. They were playing very similar to they did at the beginning of the end of last season. Where there was a flow, there was a rhythm, there was a good tempo. And second half, I'm not sure really. I think I would put it down to an improvement by Tottenham tactically. There was still some good moments second half, some half opportunities. And also, Tottenham dropped off a bit and they kept a deeper shape when they didn't have the ball. So there was less space, less opportunity to get in behind their defence. A little bit opposite to what Southampton did. There were still spaces in behind them. They still made the pitch big. So I think we'll just go with Tottenham were excellent second half. Southampton were very good first half, and the difference was the clinical finishing and the world-class strikers of Tottenham.
Adam, let's talk about Nathan Tella, shall we? He came on in the final quarter. We obviously haven't seen too much of him being a newcomer to the side, but what did you make of his performance and contribution today?
Well, he looks like a lively player. Definitely one to look out for, I think. The difficulty is with all the youngsters finding the right time to blood them. And I don't know, in an ideal world, whether if Ralph had Redmond at his disposal today, whether he would have thrown Taylor on or it would have been playing alongside Armstrong with either Redmond or Gineppo. I think Taylor probably feels to me like he needs a little bit more time, and it is unfortunate really that the League Cup defeat happened as it did because of the way the League Cup schedule is this year. I think had Saints got through a couple of rounds because they were in these consecutive midweeks, actually they wouldn't have kept fielding the same team again and again and again. It would have been a good chance for players like him to get a bit more game time. It is hard just being thrown in for off the bench for moments here and there. He's a bright spark, a bit like Smallbone, another bright young player, which is really encouraging and really positive to see. But slightly tricky time now for Saints, 3 defeats to start the season. Probably not the right time to be relying on the youngsters if you can avoid it. You need your seasoned senior players right now to step up to the plate and to kind of get a win on the board and get that forward momentum going again now. Probably the youngsters might just have to wait a little while for the seniors to kind of get things going, I think.
Yeah, talking about getting a win on the board, it's Burnley next weekend. Dean, does it make it even tougher now needing to get some points in the Premier League this season?
It's a tough fixture always going to Burnley because they play in a certain way, very direct, very physical. They've got a very good home form, been playing in the same manner for many, many years. So it's going to be a tough game anyway. But yes, there will be that pressure from the Southampton players thinking we want to get a result, we want to put another performance on. And I really believe in the Crystal Palace game and the game today. There's been some really positive moments in the performance. It's just not been for the whole game. So going to Burnley, you're going to have to be defensively sound. You're going to have to stand up to the physical test of their player. You're going to have to defend a lot of crosses, a lot of the right direct balls, pick up second balls. And once you pick up them second balls, can you find the spaces in between the lines? So a Shea Adams, a Danny Ings, an Armstrong can get on the half term and be creative in the opposition's half. So it will be tough, and the players will be consciously thinking we need to get at least a point today. We need to put a performance on. But these are the games when you have lost a couple of games, you get the opportunity to bounce back pretty quickly and get a result. So there is some positives from the performances. We've not had the results yet. But I still think they'll go to Burnley believing that they'll be able to get a result there. But a different challenge from Tottenham and Crystal Palace.
Adam, I know you said that the set of players that took on Spurs today is the team that you would pick. So aside from personnel, what changes would you like to see within those players when they take on Burnley?
Well, I really think it's going to be fascinating to see what Ralph does now, because obviously they've conceded 5 today, again playing the kind of high line. Now Burnley don't have the kind of players that the Spurs do. Not many teams do, but they're not probably going to be as much of a threat in behind as Tottenham are. But they will play. You kind of know what Burnley will want to do. They'll want to play pretty direct football. So the Saints adapt to try and kind of counter measure what Burnley are doing, or does Ralph stick with the plan and say, actually, you know what, we can impose ourselves on Burnley, we can get the defence in the midfield high up the pitch, we can press them, we can really cause them problems, knowing that they're less likely to hit us and hurt us in behind. It'd be very interesting to see what Ralph does. Obviously the safe option is to kind of drop the line back a long way and to kind of defend a lot deeper away from home and just not offer Burnley any space. Try and, you're going to have to clear a lot of crosses, a lot of direct headers for the centre halves. So what do you go for? Because as Dean hit upon, really, once Tottenham got that lead, which was 2 just moments either side of half time, it was a dream time for Mourinho, because that's what he loves. You just camp everybody deep there, and there's no pressure on you to play. You've got pace, you've got quality. You just sit back, you soak it all up, and you hit on the counter-attack. Going to Burnley, how will Saints approach that? It's going to be a very, very different, such a different test to the majority of teams in the Premier League. And they're very, very confident and very capable in playing the way that they play, especially at Turf Moor. They're always hard there to break down. So what Ralph does, you know what, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm really fascinated to see, because I could see the argument for going both ways. Football managers being football managers, they're normally pretty stubborn. And if he's decided pre-season that this is the way, I don't see him ditching it after 3 games. I think he would probably rather go to the international break and see how things are going then. But then does he feel the pressure of just needing some points and needing a win and think, actually, let's go to our comfort zone, a more comfortable way of playing, and try and get it that way? I don't know what he'll do, but I'm really looking forward to finding out already.
Well, as you say, a different test, but we're all very much looking forward to it. Adam, Dean, thank you so much for your company, as always. For everyone watching at home, make sure you join us next Saturday on Saints Live, when Saints travel to Turf Moor to take on Burnley. Until then, have a great week. Bye for now.